Mm. Hello.
Ooh,
Mm. Welcome
it's been a
to
while.
the podcast. It has been a little while. we have left, I believe.
Left on your screen? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, left. Perfect. What is that background time?
What do you mean? This background? Lost
What's
Ark.
going on? Is that an actual Lost Ark
Lost.
background?
Yeah, this is Lost Ark's Fate. This is
What?
from Phaeton.
Uh,
It's from Victorian Phaeton.
true.
I was like, yo, this scene looks so good. And so I took a screenshot.
All right.
Just looks so good.
Anyways, welcome guys to another episode of Past the Salt. Um, Today we're gonna be talking about is Christianity being canceled? It should be up in the middle of between us right now. We'll have another guest joining us shortly. But we're gonna get started. Um, yeah. How have you been actually? Start with that.
It's been good. It's been good. It's been getting busier for me. I took March break was really needed for me, and
Yeah.
and then basically did March break, and then after March break, I was just like, oh, now it's kind of getting busier, which is kind of crazy to say. But it's good. It's a good busy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been good. A little hectic, a little tiring, but still going strong.
Nice.
And how
Um,
about you, my friend?
Not too bad. Yeah, March break was definitely real busy. I work at a climbing gym and we had like March break camp. So lots of kids running around the climbing gym. Sort of dangerous, but it is what it is. Got kids just running and climbing everywhere, but it was good. It was good. And then uh yeah, I'm a wedding planner, so it's getting a little busier now.
Mm.
That summer is coming up. Uh but yeah, it's not been bad. Weather's getting nicer, so
I mean, you say nicer. It was great today. It
that
was like
that
16, 17 degrees today
that's
here.
true.
But then it's gonna be like it's supposed to be what, 3 degrees tomorrow? Like I
Uh
hate this. It's so
yeah,
bad.
it's just up and down.
It makes no sense.
It really doesn't.
Canadian weather sucks.
Yeah.
Canadian weather sucks. I'm looking at the forecast now and I'm like next week looks promising. Next week looks promising.
True. That's
But
good. But it's always up and down, right?
ugh, but everything after that is just looks bad. What's up?
All right.
So, yeah, but sounds like yeah, it sounds like both of us are pretty much getting busier
Yeah.
during this time.
Yeah, for sure. Um yeah, so let's dive right in. Wait. So we're talking about cancel culture. So um let's let's talk about what is cancel. So like what do you define as cancel? Or
Cancel
like
culture? Are we talking the general definition or the Twitter definition? Is it-
the what definition?
there's the general definition and then
Okay.
there's the Twitter definition, you know?
Okay, let's talk
So
both. So what's the general definition that
so the general definition
yeah.
is like when someone or something or a group does something that is morally wrong
Okay.
or is viewed morally wrong in the eyes of society, then the society chooses to not support that thing,
Yeah.
that someone, that thing, that group. That's cancel culture. Um, and essentially, it's essentially stopping them from doing more within the public eye, and
Okay. Yeah.
it more so affects, like, once again, people who have some kind of social status rather than like me. It's not going to affect me as much as it would affect someone else.
Yeah.
uh but like lightly salted would be affected because I think it's big enough, but like individually I don't think it would affect me. Now Twitter cancer culture is literally taking any negative without actually doing any research and then canceling that person. Like, there was a lot of there's a lot of situations where people just are on Twitter. Twitter's just a whole other world.
Yeah.
Uh, I put Twitter as my fast for Lent, and I was off Twitter
Mm-hmm.
for the past month. But like, I don't use Twitter that much. But whenever I go on it, it's either really happy or really toxic, and there's
Mm-hmm.
no in between.
Yeah.
And they're always the like on Twitter, everyone's always trying to jump the gun. They're always trying to, you know, get in on this whole cancel culture thing to make a stance,
Yeah, for
essentially.
sure.
So that's
Yeah.
how I would define cancel culture.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you that I think that's a great definition. Um and I guess in terms more of like I guess like from a Christian point of view, have you seen a lot of examples or situations where like religiously or just Christian specific, I guess, or just religiously in general, that cancel culture has played a big part in? And yeah, like what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, there was this situation with, I forget who's was it, the Hillsong leader who came out as not being Christian.
Yeah,
I know that was a big thing. Um, and then there was, I mean, it's, the debate that we taught during my interview that I did with Derek Tam, which was the thing about reckless love, for example. And there was a
yeah,
whole debate on that. It wasn't really canceled, but there was a huge debate and argument on that, and like it was causing a divide. And whenever it's like within the Christian space, I
yeah,
mean, I understand. Like, I think cancel culture in this Christian space is slightly more different because, like, for example, for the Hillsong leader who came out as non-Christian, that person or that individual, um like, you clearly shouldn't be making Christian content
yeah,
if you yourself don't believe. Like, I get that. I think that's the difference compared to you should never make something ever again. You know
for
what I mean?
sure.
So if your theology isn't sound, then you should. I think in Christian culture, it's just learn your theology. Once you have your basis down, then you can start creating content again. And I think that's fair. That's a fair argument. Um, but once again, once emotion and society takes over, I don't think everyone sees it in that logical lens. Everyone's just so quick to just say, no, you should never make anything ever again.
Yeah, I think yeah, I agree with that. Like I think like a lot of people because they want to be um like either heard or like they want to be with like the what we call like the social norm, right? Like they just jump onto um all of this like cancel culture situation without really understanding um like the whole story behind it. And a lot of times like they hear something and they just kind of jump to it and it's like, oh, like yeah, let's cancel him because blah 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 blah, because like without actually understanding like the reason why they're trying to cancel him, and they just want to be like part of that group, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
No, for
know.
sure. I mean, like with anonymity,
Mm.
it speaks volumes. Like, for example, like I tell my friends this all the time. My church friends know this. My real friends know this. Like, I'm not one to hide my thoughts and emotions. Um, like a lot of people, I mean, yes, there is a part of me that should control whether or not I should say something at times.
Yeah.
But when I see I when I get into a situation, let's say like the group is clearly uncomfortable with something,
Yeah.
then I'll usually be the one to kind of step up and do something or
Okay.
say something.
Yeah.
Um and like the issue is that in real life, not many people like that confrontation.
Mm.
Not many people want to confront someone and say those things or do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think more so in Asian culture too, because you kind of just you
Mm.
accept it and then you talk shit behind your back essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like, but when you talk about internet anonymity, then it that goes out the window. You don't need to care about what you say or how you say it because no one knows who you are and what you actually do,
Yeah.
right? So you gain this boost of confidence that you normally don't have.
Yeah.
And I mean, as gamers, we know that for sure because everyone talks trash, or almost everyone talks trash on video games, right?
Mm.
So it's like if you take that and then you allow them and give them a space where they have power, that's where cancel culture comes in.
Mm. Okay. And I guess like how do you go about kind of responding to um like cancel culture in general? Do you like respond by joining in, or do you normally respond by kind of assessing the situation?
I mean, my knee-jerk response is always to
Yeah.
figure out or gain more information. Like, I don't like making like uneducated um choices.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't know about a situation or I only hear one side of the story, then I need to hear the other side. Um, I think that's the first thing that I'll do.
Yeah.
Um, like for example, well, let's just take the recent example. Will Smith smacking
Yeah.
Chris Rock.
Okay.
Let's just go to that. Let's just go to
Yeah.
that.
All right.
Will Smith smacking Chris Rock in the face. Was it warranted? I mean, uh, is it justified? Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you should never hit someone because you're upset. And a lot of people with the someone said it really really well. I watched a video. Someone said this really well. Essentially, they said um, a lot of people defending Will Smith right now are essentially not justifying the fact like obviously it's okay and it's perfectly normal for
Yeah.
Will Smith to be upset. That's
Mm.
fine. But to defend him is not defending that he got upset, it's defending that he hit Chris Rock.
Yeah.
That's not okay, right? So, yeah, you could say, "Hey, uh Chris Rock definitely stepped over the line, but Will Smith has an issue too where you literally physically assaulted someone and that's not okay." Right? And especially on live television, that's a whole different story. Now, as for cancel culture with this, like my response to this is I need to first figure out what information and what was said. Like I watched the video in full. I watched what was said before and after. I know there were censored videos from what was like shown on TV and things like that. So I made sure I could watch it and understand what's going on. And like people who don't even know about Will Smith's marriage scenario with with Jada. Like some people don't know about that situation, right? And it's like if you put that all together, you can see where Will Smith is coming from, but at the same time, you can't justify
Yeah.
hitting someone at all. And so it falls into this point where I can A, hate Will Smith now, or B, just say what you did was wrong and I hope you never do it again. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope you learn from that mistake and never do it again. Like it should always be the latter, right? It to if I partake in cancel culture, then that means I will never or I should never have someone believe that I can fix a mistake. That's essentially what I kind of view it as, right? If I partake in cancel culture, then I should never get that same response back. Sorry, I should get the same response back. If I do something wrong, then I should be canceled for it because I'm partaking in it, right? And it falls under this whole thing where a lot of people say, "Oh, how dare you do this, cancel him, cancel that, whatever it is." And then when it comes to them making a mistake, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I wish you could forgive me." I'm like, no, you didn't forgive someone else, obviously no one's going to forgive you.
Mhm.
If you partake in cancel culture, then you should expect that to happen exactly to you if you don't live a perfect life. And as Christians, we already know we never live a perfect
Yeah.
life. We literally live a sinful life, and we will fail every day
Yeah,
in our
for
lives.
sure.
So it just comes under that anonymity pretense. Like everyone is so power hungry, you know?
Yeah. Um yeah, I think you make a good point about how like we as Christians especially, um there's so many times where we choose to uh like do the whole yeah, like we choose to jump on to like cancel culture, right? Like to cancel something. But then we don't realize that like we often do ourselves in certain
Hmm.
situations as well, right? And how do you think like what do you think are ways around that? Or like is there a way around that, or like how do we kind of yeah, like how do we like get through that? Or how should we deal with that?
Deal with, sorry, the first part, dealing with.
So let's so for example, like if there was a situation where you're canceling someone um because they did something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And they usually okay, so usually when we cancel something, um, or when like people cancel something, it's usually when someone like did something that's not um viewed as correct to them, right? Like that's viewed as wrong to them or like wrong in general, right? So like
Right.
in Will
Yeah.
Smith's example, like hitting like violence or acting on violence instead of
Hmm.
um so like you mentioned, for us personally, um like it like for the people um saying that like for us to be like, hey, it's wrong to act in violence, right? It's
Hmm.
easy for us
Hmm.
to be like, hey, it's wrong that I want to cancel Will Smith because he acted in violence and I think that's wrong, right? But
Hmm.
then if we do it ourselves, right? Like you said, like we often fall into these things ourselves.
Yep.
Um like is there a way to kind of avoid that, or like are we just being like hypocrites by saying like, oh, like when we cancel something, are we just being hypocrites because most of the time I feel like we would still do that specific thing, right? Like at
Yeah,
some
I
point.
think like, yeah, I think there's like levels to it. Like obviously there's no levels to sin in Christianity, but like
Yeah.
for example, on the topic of Will Smith hitting someone, I think going to cancel culture is a little far. Um I mean, if the repercussions for him is getting less movie shoots, whatever it might be, then sure, that's his punishment. It's whatever. But for example, another example is like the whole thing about the whole sexual harassment, sexual assault thing within Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
Like those people obviously should not be partaking in creating more media or
Mm-hmm.
mediums in entertainment. Like I think that's a level where it's like, yes, that's up to a point where like you've clearly crossed a line to like
Mm.
you have committed a very bad crime.
Hmm.
Like that is severe in the sense of like societal law. Like there's a I feel like there's a limit. Like obviously not every a majority of people I would hope in the world are not sexually assaulting people, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
calling people, yeah, calling people out on that I think is the right thing to do and being like, "Hey, that's messed up, blah blah blah." But to say the other side of the coin is to say, can they never change?
Yeah.
No, that would like to say an ultimatum and say you're never going to change, not true, right? Um, People can change always. It's whether or not you can be careful on giving them an opportunity to change, right? Um, but yeah, to kind of answer your question, is there anything we can do in particular? Just take it with like if you don't want to follow that person, then don't do it. I don't
Mm.
think you have to go to a point where you have to cancel the person.
Yeah.
I think it naturally I think I think naturally people should just it's like having an opinion. You like what you like, you don't like what you like. Like for example, Will Smith for me, I used to love him as a kid. I loved him in Fresh Prince. I loved him in his movies, right? And then seeing that, now I'm like, okay, now I take a step back, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't like what Will Smith did, and now I'll be like, okay, so I won't be like as big of a fan anymore because I wasn't a fan of what he just did. And that's it. That should be the end of it, honestly. That's what fans are.
Yeah.
But then you have like a whole bunch of other, things, so on and so forth, and
Yeah.
it just gets so nasty. Like I'm sure you have situations where like
Mm.
it's like those things where like you like something and then other
Hmm.
people don't and then they start hating on you for it. It's like what?
Yeah, for sure. So then that's a good transition. So then, in terms of that, like, how do you, like, maybe specifically to you, or even like, how do you deal with or approach like situations where uh others have different opinions? Like a general question, like, how do you approach people with different opinions when like when it's something small, obviously it's not as bad, but when it's something like really big or like really heavy, like how do you approach those situations when someone has like a very different opinion
Um
that
I mean, let's talk I guess we can talk about like okay, so I have a story. So it's
Mm,
essentially this was in high school. Um a good friend of mine just wanted to talk uh about Christianity
mm,
and my current understandings of what like of people who commit certain crimes. So, for example, if someone committed murder, for example, what is my stance on it? Should that person go to heaven? I think that was like pretty much the question on it was.
yeah.
And obviously, their stance was no, like they obviously shouldn't go to heaven. They committed a crime. But
Yeah.
for me, my stance was obviously if that person has not done it again and has repented from it and then has asked for forgiveness and believes that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, then yes, you like that person should also go to heaven. It doesn't matter what they've done, it matters or what they're doing now and what they believe now. And I think the biggest thing that you have to do when you talk about people with opinions is that you need to find or steer the conversation in a way that benefits them and what they stand for. So, for example, this is a very good one, which works with like anti-vaxxers or parents who are anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't matter how hard you try to argue with someone who's an anti-vaxxer. So you
Yeah.
and I are both pro-vaccines, right?
Yeah.
You should definitely get your children should be vaccinated when they're born. You should get your flu vaccines, you should get COVID vaccines, all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Now, for a parent who is anti-vax, um, to them, it doesn't matter how much you can bring logic or whatever it is, it's never going to work. It
yeah.
never does. right? They bring up these fake papers and they believe it, and then blah blah blah, and then there was this whole thing about vaccines give you autism and stuff like that. Like it's crazy talk, right? To us,
Mm.
it's crazy talk. The science doesn't back it up, but
Mm.
um, if you change the conversation, like at the end of the day, what's the core thing that every parent wants for their child? Every parent wants to make sure that their child is safe.
Yeah.
They don't want their child to die. So if you steer the conversation instead of saying, "Oh, you're so stupid," or "You're so dumb," or "Why do you not believe in vaccines? Vaccines work." It's, "Hey, let's talk about how we can keep your child safe." And then introduce vaccines as a stance to keep the child safe rather than it's just a matter of fact.
Yeah.
When you bring it up in that way, then you found a common medium between two people where it doesn't matter how anti-vax or vax you are. The agreement is that, hey, you love your child and we want to help your child so that you can protect your child. Like that makes it a lot easier for them to be open to the conversation rather than having a like large thick stone wall.
Mm.
And I think that's what we need to get across, especially even when it comes to like religion, topics of religion. You can't just shove religion down someone's throat because you're just it's the same idea. You're shoving these truths without actually making it, accessible for the person or something that the person can relate to, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing there.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that. There's definitely a lot of ways around how go about it. Yeah, I definitely like a lot of people say like um or like a lot of people I know is like
Hmm.
fighting fire with fire, which I don't agree with. So like
Yeah.
yeah, so like if they're like, oh, you're wrong, like I'm just gonna like shame on you or like kind of call you out on it, which I mean
You have like a Do you have a story for that? Do you have a story or a situation?
um yeah, I mean sort of. Yeah, I guess so. All right. So this is like I don't even know how I'm allowed to say this, but I'm pretty sure I'm okay with about this. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I work at a climbing gym. I'm not gonna say which climbing gym. I work at a gym. Let's say that. I work at a
Okay.
gym, a climbing gym somewhere. I'm not gonna say which one, but um, yeah. So like our owner just is not the greatest at like what's it called uh like customer relationship, I guess. Not the greatest at like chatting with customers or like
Mhm.
building customer relationship, right? And a lot of the times when we have complaints, it's usually about specific things that like as you said, like that they don't believe is correct, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
like anti-vaxxers coming in and not wanting to um like when we had the vaccine mandate, like now it's obviously lifted, but when we had the vaccine mandate, when you had to
Yeah.
show a vaccine, a lot of people weren't happy or weren't like happy about the whole vaccine thing. And then even now, like so we because we're a private business, we really recently, so this I think this past Wednesday we finally lifted the mask mandate. But
Yeah.
then Canada or like Ontario lifted like a week earlier, right? So
Yeah.
during that week, like we had a lot of complaints about how like why masks were still required to enter the facility.
Hmm.
And a lot
Right.
of people were obviously not happy about having a like mask mandate to have the mask on, right?
Mhm.
And then like so then they were like complaining to us about how like oh like we should like have masks off, blah 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 blah, right? Whatever. Um and like even though we are technically like there's no wrong like for us because for us it's we believe that like we're pro vaccine, right? And pro masks. And
Yeah.
because we're a private business, we're allowed to um have that rule, right? Of like you have to wear a
Yeah, you
mask
can
when you
create
come
your
in.
own rules. Yeah.
Yeah. So then so then like a prime example of not something that I would do personally if I was the owner. Like someone came in and was like, "Oh, like complaining about like whatever," and then our owner was there, and our owner was like, "Yeah, like if you don't like the rules, like you can just like get out of here and don't come back." And I was just like, "That's
What?
not." I was like, "That's not how you contact a customer." I'm like, you should be going like, "Hey, sorry, but like we have a rule," and explain like why like we wanted to keep a thing on, right? It's like
Yeah.
some of our customers don't feel comfortable, and that's why we kept the mask mandate for an extra week. You can't just be like it's like you're literally just being like, "Hey, you're wrong." Like screw
Yeah.
off, right? And I'm just like, bro, that's not how you deal with
Yeah.
customers.
That's
Not how
messed
you deal
up.
with customers. But okay. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So like there's a lot of situations where like I feel like a lot of people fight fire with fire of like, oh, like I believe you're wrong, therefore like you can go screw off, like whatever, right? Instead of kind of explaining the situation
Yeah.
or trying to kind of diffuse it, they like add oil to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like with that situation too, right? If we link it back to like cancel culture, essentially, like
Mm.
let's say your owner did that to like a good amount of people, then you would see a huge riot against you, and essentially cancel culture
Yeah.
in terms of like once again like places like that where you
Hmm.
can make review is review bombing. If you get review bombed, you're screwed, right? That's essentially
Hmm.
canceling or trying to cancel your
Yeah,
location
for sure.
into stopping from from being there, right?
Hmm.
And so as a result, what can you do? um yeah, so thankfully it didn't get to that point, I guess, for you, right? It was just a couple of customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, like, so on the topic of cancel culture, then would you
Yeah.
say Christianity is being canceled?
Um, I mean, I think there's definitely aspects of it that um like I don't know if it's like being canceled, but I
Yeah.
can definitely see that there's a lot of aspects that are um like like it can be a very dangerous area,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like religion in general even um because religion in general isn't kind of like it's not like when it comes to Christian beliefs, it's not like law, right? Where like people go like it's right or wrong. And it's a lot of the times it comes down to um what like your beliefs are, right? And surrounding like beliefs and surrounding Christianity and like the whole idea of like belief, there it's a lot um there's a lot of things that can be um like targeted, I guess, or like into kind of um I don't know. Yeah, like
uh with Christianity, I wouldn't say canceled. I feel like it's controversial.
yeah.
The topic of Christianity, it's always been controversial. I wouldn't say being canceled, although there are people or groups within the Christian faith that are being canceled, I would say.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say Christianity as a religion is being canceled because I feel like that's pretty ridiculous to say.
Hmm.
But I feel like there are groups or people that represent Christianity that are being canceled. Like for example, like the Pope is not being canceled at all. Like
Hmm.
The current Pope is great. I think the current Pope is
Hmm.
doing a good job. Um, but for example, you have the extremist Christians in the States, for example, or you have like evangelical, like TV evangelical people, like like pastors and stuff like that, that may speak crazy things and stuff like that, or really ridiculous things, or people that have um, essentially lied on TV saying that miracles happen when they're completely staged in the
Hmm.
eyes of like in the lens of a Christian like service, for example. Like there's a lot of cases like that, and for those people I think yeah, no, like it falls under that categories of you shouldn't be you shouldn't be evangelizing that way.
Hmm.
Like you really need to get your faith straight, your theology straight. You don't need to fake Christianity to make it look good, right? God is good. You don't ever need to fake something or act something out because we know that God will act for us or with us or through us, right? Um so I feel like in that aspect it's like the hard part for us as Christians is to kind of fix the damage that's been done. So for example, like our church goes on First Nations missions, and the Catholic and Christian religion and people within that our faith has done a lot of damage to the First Nations people here in Canada, for obvious reasons, residential schools, etc., etc., and not treating them as humans as they should be, right? Equal, and this was their land first, that kind of idea. Um, it requires so much for us to fix that because that's generations of resentment and hate that we now have to shoulder upon ourselves and say
Yeah.
that's not what Christianity is,
Yeah.
and we need to now somehow be able to reach out to those communities and say what that was not Christianity, but
Yeah.
this is, and then you're able to kind of do that, and that's a lot for us Christians to do. I think that's really hard.
Yeah.
I think that's super super hard. So um I mean I had a friend who essentially like we were talking. I believe I was driving her home after something, and we were having conversations in my car.
Yeah.
And one of the conversations we got into was essentially how she has kind of fallen or has seen or dated or interacted with these church F boys, essentially,
Yeah.
right? And we got into this whole conversation of church F boys and like how like they just go to church for the sake of going to church, and then like if I wanted to say it, I call it the church oppas in Korean, right? The church oppas is really bad, and the only reason why I say that, right, the church oppas being bad is because we're talking about the oppas that are like, oh hey, you want to come to my house and do Bible study? like, like that's so bad. Like
Yeah.
obvious, like those are the people. But that's the thing. Those are the people, right? That these like that girls or guys, maybe, right? That might fall into. And the idea here is that those are not actual good church oppas. They're not actual good people and good Christians, or they're not Christians at all in most cases, right?
Yeah.
Using this veil of Christianity as bait to kind of pull innocent girls in and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And we were getting into this conversation, and it essentially it got to a point where she was just saying like, yeah, I don't know if I can trust church people anymore. And I'm like, hey, absolutely, like you have from your experience you have all the reason to dislike church or people that go to church, so on and so forth. But like, but then I tell her, I'm like, hey, but if you, I'm not saying that I'm the perfect example, but I'm like, I'm sure you've known me for so long. I'm not, hopefully, I don't represent that group. And I just want to show that I don't want you to put that label on all Christians. It's just unfortunate that you met those Christians only. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where you got to be careful with that cancel culture. It's like you can't just openly hate a group and put a label on it just because you've personally had bad experiences. The fact of the matter is, it goes with all topics, even with, like, if we wanted to get into like racism and stuff like that too. It's like you can definitely have bad people, right? But that it's just a couple of bad apples from the group, and we have to take that ownership as Christians to right that wrong. And we, even though it's not our own, we have to take it as our own, because that's what we have to do. Yeah.
Hey, yes,
Hello.
yourself.
Uh, okay. Hi, I am Priscilla. Nice to meet you.
Hey,
Hey,
Priscilla.
Hey, I'm sorry for being late today. There's some emergencies that came up.
no worries.
Hey, things
Yeah.
happen. Life happens. It's all good. It's good to have you join
Yep.
us here. Yeah, well, just
Thank you.
just
Thank
give
you.
people a little short intro on like how you got to, I guess, got to know Lightly Salted a little
I
bit.
got to know it's all that. Okay, so I was introduced to this rhythm game at the arcade called the Pump It Up. I'm sure a lot of
What?
people.
What
I'm sure a
the?
lot of people. I don't know if you guys know Tommy. It's also part of that community.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
not.
at one point in our community server, we're setting up a stream notification of people who does stream, and I realized at that time I think Tommy's the before you guys were lightly salted, I believe it was like Christian Esport League.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, oh, I was kind of interested. 'Cause I'm like, as like a Christian, I've never even like thought about something that I can connect Christianity and gaming together, which got me
Hmm.
interested. So I started like reaching out to Tommy and some of the admin. I believe her name is Sarah,
Hmm.
and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
So welcome, welcome. So
thank
we
you,
we
thank you.
basically dove into so far the topic on like cancel culture and things like that. Do you personally have experiences of witnessing cancel culture like within your life or anything like that, or like shunning it, participating in it maybe? I don't know. Anything. Like, what are
Um,
your general thoughts on it?
within my life, this is not really. Mm, yes. So at one point, I was at for my college. I went to dorm college. At one point, I was
Hmm.
helping out with like our varsity esport teams.
Hmm.
And I think one of the team members just didn't like me, had beef with me, so he decided to
Oof.
spread rumors about me, and it to a point
Dang.
it got me being investigated by the school.
What?
Yeah, it was pretty
Dang.
serious. Like, well, like a little bit trigger warning. It's about like
Yeah.
suicide. So he has a little bit of like a, I would say like a depression.
Right.
So at one point he wasn't performing as well as the other team members, and when I talked to him about it, I said like, "Oh, you need to practice more to keep up with the team because it's also part of like the guidelines sort of being on a varsity team."
Hmm.
And at that point, he's just like, "Oh, you're kicking me out of the team because his skill is not good enough." And he said that he was um well gonna kill himself,
Right.
and to a point where he reported to the school where he twisted it to a point that he said I told him
To kill
Dang.
to do
himself.
that. And I'm like, okay, first of
Right.
all, I didn't. I would never.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, so that was a pretty stressful moment back then. Um and in my opinion, a lot of cancel culture stuff, it's also from people like playing the victim. I'm not saying
Mhm.
they are like not the victim in some cases,
Fair.
obviously.
Yeah.
But um for cancel culture, I feel like the person who might have did something bad, well, right, should like how do I word this properly? I feel like they also deserve like us like for their side of the story to be released
Hmm.
before anything happens to them. But cancel culture, I feel like it's a lot more like that. You never see that happening. It's always someone being like, "Oh, this person did that," and they're just like, "We don't like them anymore."
Yeah, it's such a knee-jerk reaction to everything. Like
Yeah.
there was this situation where in the Smash Bros community actually, where they called out one of the pro players, Nairo, and they called all these allegations against him with sexual assault, sexual harassment, engaging in sexual interactions with minors and stuff like that. Like there's all
Mhm.
these allegations, and then he got banned from Twitch. He got banned from Twitch permanently, and then he got essentially removed from every single thing, and then took a step back. He came back a year later, almost a year later, with actual proof that none of it was true. Absolutely zero. None of it was true. And like imagine you've just destroyed this man's professional career and none of it was true. Like that was messed up to read. You know what I mean? And for me, I'm just
Mhm.
like this. Like obviously, like I was mentioning how Twitter just takes it to the extreme, but it's like how ridiculous. And the thing is, the people that might have canceled them in the first place don't care about what happens afterwards. It's just they get this high of canceling someone, right? Whether it's out of spite or because of some negative rumor, right? Like you're saying, and then whatever happens happens, and then they just leave it. And it's so messed up. It's such a messed up thing to do.
Yeah, because a lot of the times the person who's getting canceled, they don't have a chance to voice what happened like from their side of the story.
Yeah.
So I in my opinion, that's kind of messed up because you can't. It's basically they're like it's coming down to like committing a crime when you're in court. At least you get a chance to defend yourself with a lawyer. But when it comes to cancel culture, that never seems to happen.
Yeah, it's extremely rare.
Hmm.
Extremely rare. I think the weird part about cancel culture too is that there's these people that like I said, power hungry people that try to drag out like something that happened like over 10 years in the past. And I'm like, why are you bringing something that's irrelevant? Like 10 years is a lot of time. I think we can all admit that 10 years is plenty of time for someone to change from what they've done. You know what I mean?
Are you talking about like the Disney employee who had like a racist tweet like 10 years ago?
There's like
And
a
then
couple of
yeah,
situations,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then I remember I forgot his name. I think it was like a director or something. And I believe Disney fired him after, but it's like the culture that we have 10 years ago, it's really different from now. Like obviously there's
Yeah,
a lot of things that are more unacceptable currently, especially when it comes to like racism and stuff like that. But it's
yeah.
unfair to be like obviously like when someone make a racist comment 10 years ago, I'm sure they won't make the same comment right now.
Mhm.
So it's kind of unfair to have like especially like talented people like this just getting their entire life destroyed just because something they said 10 years ago.
Yeah, like 10 years ago for me is high school. If I got called out for everything I said in high school, I'd be done for. You know what I mean?
Me
Like,
too, actually.
school me was not the smartest person. You know what I mean? High school
Yeah.
me was stupid. I was extremely vulgar. I'm not saying I'm not vulgar now, but I'm still extremely vulgar. And some of the stuff I said were definitely not safe for work or any place or like is in this society I would be completely destroyed in. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like when you're at that age or like in those situations, you shouldn't bring that up. Like I don't see why you would bring that up, right? Like another one was like you know how like Trudeau, like our prime minister, essentially. Remember how he got called out for blackface?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but